We're back taking notes in our Bible, and now we've made it to the book of Judges. We just finished the book of Joshua, now we're looking at the book of Judges. We're going through our Bible, making progress, going somewhere in our Bible study, not just learning something here and there, but actually making progress towards something. So, the book of Judges, it's a sequel to the book of Joshua. And the title comes from the fact that the book is about the deliverers, or judges, that God raises up. You see, Israel would rebel, God would raise up an enemy against them, then they would cry out to God, God's heart would be moved, and then He would raise up a deliverer or a judge to deliver them. And this book shows the law of human collapse. Men get worse. When men don't have God in their lives, they just continuously get worse until it's like they're from the jungle or something. That's why people talk about you either go back to the Bible or back to the jungle. And you can see that just by turning on the news and seeing how stupid people are. They've forsaken the Bible, and now they don't even know how to think properly. They're thinking up stuff that no one would even suspect somebody would even think. Just crazy stuff. But this book's got 27 chapters, 618 verses, and 8,967 words. And the author, probably Samuel. Historical time, probably somewhere around 1425 BC to 1120 BC. It speaks of the chastening of God's children due to incomplete obedience. Incomplete obedience is as bad as disobedience, because they didn't fully go through with what God wanted them to do, and they pay the consequences for it. So the historical. Remember, there's 3 applications in the Bible: historical, devotional, and doctrinal. Historical. What happens to God's people when they depart from His word? What happened to Israel when they departed from His word? Devotional. What can we get out of it? When men don't have a final authority, they do what's right in their own eyes. That's a picture of the Laodicean church period we're in. Men have forsaken the King James Bible, the final authority. Now their opinion becomes their authority, and people are just doing what's right in their own eyes. If we don't live according to the Bible, if we don't have the Bible as our final authority, then we're just going to end up making our own rules, and what one person thinks is right may not actually be right, and what somebody else thinks is right is probably different than what everybody else thinks is right. You know, some people think it's right to, some men think it's right to be pedophiles. They think that that's just love. Some people think it's right to be homosexuals. They think that that's love. They're doing what's right in their own eyes. But we have a final authority. We know those things are wrong. When men do what's right in their own eyes, they collapse. Now, doctrinal. It's a picture of the tribulation. You're going to see some things. That's a picture of the tribulation time period. And Jesus, you're going to see Him pictured as our deliverer. You see all throughout the Bible where Jesus is the deliverer. God is the true deliverer. Chronologically, well, the book has 21 chapters, but chronologically, the book ends with chapter 16. And 17 through 21 actually take place sometime within those 16 chapters, as does the book of Ruth, which we're going to do next. It takes place sometime in those 16 chapters. And the book covers, they say, about 300 to 350 years. And there's 7 weak things in the book of Judges: a left hand, an ox goad, a woman, because the woman's called a weaker vessel in the Bible. Sometimes a woman has to do something that a man won't do because he's too weak to do it. A nail, a piece of millstone, a pitcher and trumpet, and a jawbone of an ass. God uses the weak things to confound the things which are mighty. And then here's a list of the judges, and there's 13 of them if you count Abimelech, which some people don't count Abimelech. And I messed up the order here, so don't really pay attention to that. But you have Othniel, Ehud, Shamgar, Deborah and Barak, Gideon, Abimelech, Tola, Jair, Jephthah, Ibzan, Elon, Abdon, and Sampson. That's your judges in the book. Now, a basic breakdown: Israel's idolatry and its results in chapters 1 through 3. 3 through 16, Israel's judges. Then 17 through 21, remember, those happen sometime within those 16 chapters. You read about Israel's total depravity. Now, a chapter by chapter breakdown, just real quick. You have in chapter 1, Israel's toleration of the Canaanites, their partial obedience, incomplete obedience. They didn't get rid of all the people that they should have. Then in chapter 2, you pretty much have a summary of chapters 3 through 16. Chapter 3, you see Israel's conquered by Mesopotamia. Then God's going to raise up a judge because they cried out to him, and Othniel delivers. And then you see the punishment from Eglon because, after Othniel's gone, Israel goes back to their sorry ways. Then they got punishment from Eglon, king of Moab. And God raises up Ehud. Ehud delivers. He stabs Eglon in the gut. And then same thing happens again. Israel goes back. Now you have God raises up an enemy. They got conflict with the Philistines. Shamgar delivers with the ox goad. Beats up a whole bunch of people. Goes Jackie Chan on them. Goes Jet Li on them. Goes Chuck Norris on them. And uses a weak thing, an ox goad. Just like Ehud used a dagger. A picture of the sharp two-edged sword. Chapter 4. They done went back. They're conquered by Jabin. God raises up a deliverer, Deborah and Barak. And Jael, a woman named Jael, nails Sisera to the floor. She takes a hammer and a nail and nails him. That's where you get the saying, she nailed it. And that will picture the Antichrist getting a head wound. Now, chapter 5, you got the song of Deborah and Barak, and it's about the second coming. Read it and you'll see it's got some things about the second coming. Chapter 6, Midian oppresses Israel because, they went back again. God raises up someone to oppress them. Then he gets a deliverer when they cry upon him, and he destroys the altar of Baal. Gideon destroys the altar of Baal. And then you have Gideon wanting a sign, and you got the sign of the fleece. Chapter 7, you got Gideon's 300 men that he gets out of 32,000. He narrows it down to 300 out of 32,000, and then Gideon defeats Midian. Chapter 8, Gideon defeats Ziba, Zalmunna, and you got to read about Gideon's ephod and the death of Gideon. Chapter 9, you see Abimelech, the one, some people say he's a judge, some people don't believe he's a judge. He starts a revolt, he kills his own brethren, tries to set himself up as a king, and he gets killed by a woman. He's a picture of the Antichrist. A piece of a millstone knocks him out, and he's killed by a woman. Chapter 10, you got the next judges, Tola and Jair. Chapter 11, Jephthah. That's the judge. He delivers Israel. And then you see his famous tragic vow where he ends up killing his daughter. He offers his daughter, the tragic vow he made. She's the first one that came out of the door, and he has to offer her. Well, they didn't have to, but it's judges, and every man's doing what's right in their own eyes. Chapter 12, Jephthah's conflict with Ephraim. And then you see, very briefly, the judges Ibzan, Elon, and Abdon. Chapter 13, probably the most famous judge, Sampson, the birth of Sampson. Chapter 14, Samson's marriage. Chapter 15, Samson defeats the Philistines. And you got all these great stories in there where he beats up a lion, takes honey out of its belly and eats it, and then takes it home to his dad. And then you got stories about him tying the tails of 300 foxes together, setting them on fire and setting the fields on fire. Just great stories in there. Samson defeats the Philistines. Then you got the famous story, Samson and Delilah. She cuts his hair. You got the death of Samson. He knocks down the pillars, and he kills more of the enemy in his death than he did in all of his life. And when Samson's on those pillars, he's got those arms stretched out, a picture of Jesus Christ with his arms stretched out on the cross. In chapter 17, you got Micah and the Levite.